Hi, and welcome to the VOILA Method podcast, Solutions for the Mind, Body, and Soul with Joel Crandall, the creator and developer of the VOILA Method. The VOILA Method bridges the gap between the complex, making it simple, using an assessment and a treatment protocol that aligns the mind, the body, and the spirit. VOILA Method is more than a technique, it's a lifestyle to help you as a practitioner and your clients. And today's guest is Paul Kendall Turner of Three Peaks Health out of Langley, Vancouver, Canada, or however you say that address up there. Paul, how are you this morning?
Good. Enjoying our little bit of snow that we have up here, so it's all good. I think it's the only snow that we've had actually in the Vancouver area, so that's nice. Thank you very much for having me today.
Well, I look forward to talking with you today. I usually always like to start off the podcast with, since you've been doing Voila for a while now, how has it helped and changed you personally?
Um, well, as you talked about Voila being there for a while, I came to the first class in Phoenix, Arizona, about 2.5 years ago, and I was looking for something to really just help my clients. I didn't really understand how much it was going to help me personally in my own internal growth, as well as help my clients as well. I think sometimes you find what you need when you're not truly looking for it, and that aspect of growth is there. And each stage of Voila has been, amazing to help me kind of explore my true self and really try to find a little bit more about my internal self. And each time I do that, the ability to help clients has grown exponentially. So
Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome, Paul. That's something you touched on there, and I want to follow up with is, at least for myself and what I've seen over the years of teaching this, that's different from other modalities is, level one, we work with the physical aspects.
Yeah.
And then we have a 1.5 because it takes us, 4 days to actually finish out the entire body. But then each level doesn't just patty cake on top of the other one. It takes you to a whole new level. And it doesn't just keep rehashing old information. Can you share a little bit, without giving too much away, of the different progressions that you've been through?
When I first started with the 1.0, as I mentioned, I was looking for something to help my clients. It's a very simple technique in some respects. The simplicity of Voila is beautiful. However, it has intricacies at every level, and it's kind of very much like the golden number. Like if you look at golden angles or such like that, everything kind of expands off of it. You have complexity with simplicity, and that's really what I see with Voila, is that finding what the priority is with Voila is easy. So you start off with a level one, and then you progress and you expand outwardly to more physical on the 1.5. And then from there, it's really, you dive under the water as it is and into a little bit more of what a lot of other modalities don't look at. They'll talk about limbic system. They'll talk about changing perception, but they don't give you a lot of tools most of the time for the limbic system, for the perceptive systems to help your clients actually make a proper and long-term change in their mentality, in their mindset, in their heart, in their beliefs, and even in some respects in their soul. Just this change that you'll see in them. I really have found that there's a large difference in the way that Voila takes on the non-balances and injuries that a person has in a very heartfelt way, and really doesn't try to push people over the edge or push them off the edge. And every concern that you've ever taught is things get real fast, especially you go into level 2, level 3. You as a practitioner have to be ready for it. You have to have a caring demeanor about it, and you really have to be able to have the empathy and the guidance for that client, help them through what they're going through. And it's not just a one and done correction, it's multiple layers most of the time. So you'll see things that are like, oh, I did this, and there might be a simple correction. Yes, you might have an ankle that's out, and you might, correct that. But after that, there might be emotions that are there, and there might also be that it was something that you saw when that injury happened. So there's layers you have to move through, and you can do a major amount at level 1 in that physical. But each level that you add onto it, it's like not one Lego block, it's like adding a whole Lego set and saying, here's some more stuff for you to play with. And the way that you can construct it in different ways allows you to really go into multiple layers. And I haven't seen that with most systems that are out there. I've seen, especially with the perceptive and the limbic, they'll say the limbic rules all, and they give you nothing to deal with it.
Exactly. It's like me saying, hey, Paul, just let it go. Well, what does it mean?
What does that mean?
It's just letters.
My mind, it doesn't, letting it go doesn't give you anything. Like, you have to have a change in that mentality and in that balance of, like, if you have a negative thought or a negative emotion trapped in a piece of issue, you have to help the client through that. Some of it is physical, but there is other components to it.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's why I like to work organically.
Yes.
These are my tools. This is my tool, and that's all I need. It's people have been seeing me post stuff, and I'm like, you just can't put a patch on it. The pain goes away, but heroin makes the pain go away too. I'm not going to give that to my client. I want it to be organic, so the client makes the change. That's where the real power is, when the client can acknowledge it and go, oh, I can make this change. And that's where the real power is. That's where the real power is. And getting them to understand what letting go means, and showing them that they can let go and it is safe to let go. Well, very good, Paul. Thank you for kind of explaining out the different levels there. What difference has it made in your practice? I know you've talked about a little bit, or just in your clinic itself, because I think you have the most VOILA practitioners at your clinic.
Overall, I believe that, it's helped the overall practice. We have we've got 4 other practitioners in the office that use VOILA at different levels and at different times. So it's really helped them expand their own caseload and their own ability to get results that the clients are looking for, as well as take on some of the challenging things that they may think it's one area, and they may be stretching that area a bunch of times with a different technique and getting nowhere, and then they actually reassess with VOILA, and it's not the neck, it's the hips or an ankle that's actually causing the dysfunction through the system, because everything's not balanced, the keystones aren't stacked. And it has really allowed each one of us as individuals to take a look at things in a very neutral way of, okay, what is this? Why is this not getting better? What do we need to look at? What inputs do we need to look at? And it's also allowed them to have the power to ask for help if they think it's something that's another level that, say, I have or one of the other practitioners have, be able to ask above kind of where they're at, and make sure that, or ask the village and get the response.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big things that I've really loved.
Yeah, one of the things I'd like you to share, Paul, is because you just helped out at the level 1 here in LA, and we had, and so what Paul's referring to with when he's talking about the stretching, he does fascial stretch therapy, and we had a fascial stretch therapist in the class, and we were able to show him how to synergistically use VOILA with the FST. But Paul, can you talk to him about, because we were working on an area trying to stretch it, and this is what Paul was referring to earlier, but the problem, the increased range of motion would never happen until we found the problem, and it wasn't even close to where we were doing the stretch to. So can you just expand on that for me?
We had one of the individuals in the class down in LA. We're stretching out his hip, showing the hip movement pattern of of FST, and he's very much blocked at some of the end ranges, R1, very little movement in his left leg or his right leg. As we came down and did the assessment of VOILA, figure out what is actually needing to be balanced, it ended up being his ankle, one of the lateral cubiform bones. And just putting a little bit of pressure on that and stabilizing it, even before the VOILA correction, we could actually move the hip much more. And then after we did the correction and standing, back on the table, and you had a good increase, so I would say 40 to 50% increase in stretch. And then we were able to actually get, instead of a bony block, we were able to get a proper FST, like opening and stretching. It wasn't the hip that was blocking, it was further down the line at the ankle that was, the issue. And then there's other ones that we've had where, for yourself, you showed an example, where to put a little bit of pressure on your neck because of your previous concussions, and your lateral stretch across with your leg went from being about 20 degrees.
if it was 20, Paul, thank you for being generous.
I said about 20. You couldn't even cross your midline with that leg until somebody put gentle pressure to stabilize your neck. So this is what I talk about when I say being neutral, is that your belief of where you think the tightness is may not be where the tightness is. And I really love this aspect of VOILA, because if I'm doing FST combined with it, and VOILA says, okay, this is the area, you do the correction, there's still musculature and fascia that needs to be like opened up gently and stretched. So it can intertwine very nicely between the two methods. And we do that here consistently because most of the therapists here have both of these modalities. So it plays back and forth at times when you're trying to figure out why isn't somebody moving correctly. The other aspect with VOILA, as well as a few of the other techniques, is that I really like that VOILA tests standing or sitting or lying down. So you're not just having a client lie down on the table for your treatments, because you don't always see what's going on if they're lying down. So having the ability to treat a client standing or having the ability to treat a client sitting in their problem-like position, it really gives you much more of a ability to work with that client and solve that problem that they're having. If it is physical, if it is that perceptive of the eyes, or if it is slightly emotional based as well, where the emotions not letting them move because of the tissue.
Now, we had a great example of that. You sent me a video of one of your baseball pitchers. And from the video, I was able to assess it. I said, Paul, this is what I'm seeing. This is what the VOILA assessment showed. And it was at the very end of his release point is what the spot is that we had to correct. What happened after you made that correction?
His pitching, one, volume went up, so he was able to pitch more without any pain. Two, he was able to pitch more accurately. And then also three, his speed went up. And it wasn't at his upper body. Well, once again, it was in his big toe, and we had one other correction in his fibula head that he needed to have corrected. And then there was also a little bit of hesitation and frustration that we were dealing with on an emotional level, because he had this constant issue going on for about a year and a half. And all those things have to be balanced.
And then that shows beautifully too the synergistic and the bridging between the physical and the mental. In that case, the physical ankle issue and toe issue caused the emotion.
Yes.
So once we were able to clear that, the emotion's just going to go away. Once you just let the brain know, oh, I don't have that anymore, I can let that go. Beautiful, Paul. Beautiful. You've done a great job of talking synergistically on how it works with everybody. Is there another? I know we worked with a writer when I was up there at your Three Peaks Health, and he had to stop writing because he couldn't sit. And he had been traveling the world, living at yoga centers and ashrams, trying to heal himself. And we were able to find he had that near-death experience, and that's when it opened up a portal to his sister that he didn't know he had. And we actually had the before and after pictures of his body and his face after that. So that was a pretty special session. But you want to talk about a volleyball player that you've been working with. Now, before Paul mentions this story, he is going to say the word convergence. And I just want to put a disclaimer up before Paul mentions this. Many people, many modalities think they know what they are doing with convergence. I'm here to tell you, you don't know a goddamn thing of what you're doing with convergence. Convergence can be extremely, I don't want what's the word I'm looking for, Paul? I don't want to use the word that's in my head. It can be very disruptive to the nervous system. Let's put it that way. Convergence can be extremely disruptive to the nervous system. And if you don't know what you're doing, as Paul mentioned earlier in this podcast, shit can hit the fan really fast. And this is why I don't show videos of the work online, is because if you don't know how to handle when shit hits the fan, then you and your client are both lost. And now that client doesn't trust you anymore. So limit the convergence, Paul, but go ahead and tell that story. I had to put a disclaimer on that.
with that, especially with all the emotions it can bring up, as well as the physical that it can bring up with that aspect of convergence. I was working with a young 16-year-old female volleyball player. She came in before, done some volleyball with her for a knee issue that had resolved nicely. And then she'd come back because play had been kind of not great, and then was dealing with a lower back pain / tension, especially in two ready positions. So one waiting for the ball on the back line, and then also up with the net, hands up. Just wasn't playing the way she usually does. She's a 6'1" player, long arms, very dominant, high-level player, and she was playing meek and also hurting. So we started off and we looked at the aspect, and it came down to her pinky finger was the first correction, and that was from a block that she'd taken. So we did a correction to her pinky finger, and then we moved back, and then her hip was also part of the lower back. So there was a simple hip pubis correction that needed to happen, and that took care of most of the pain. She was down to about a 2 out of 10, and so I asked her to get into the ready position again, of hands down into the volleyball position. And I was on her left, and I just moved in. I wanted to get a better look at her shoulder because it was kind of dropped, and she flinched and startled. And I sat there and then moved back, moved in slightly again. She did it again, flinched and startled. So I stopped and looked up, and I said, "Have you had a head shot or anything like that lately?" And her mom was in the room and said, "Yeah, she took a elbow to the head on a big block 8 weeks ago. We didn't think anything of it." And I said, "Well, we checked for anything?" She's like, "No, she had no headaches, no nothing. Just the elbow came down with her blocking partner." And so I stepped back. I said, "Okay, we're going to do an eye assessment now." And we went through everything, and what was not balanced was convergence, as well as movements from left towards the right side. And so I had to look at balancing both of these aspects out, the physical aspects of what was going on with it, as well as the emotions that she had, and have her move through them. I don't want to get too much into that. That is the level 2 and level 3 work that we do with emotions and sort of the perception of the eye. But it was a couple layers of emotion and a couple layers of movement that we had to do. And she stood back up and she said, "I have no pain in my back." I said, "Okay, so let's do a couple more movements, load a few things." No pain, jumping, no pain, movement, no pain. So she left, she felt good. Got an email on the Monday, it was a Friday appointment, an email on the Monday, she had a tournament that weekend. And her mom had said, "Really want to thank you for the session. The client felt amazing. Was back to her dominance of blocking like crazy, as well as smashing the ball down opportunistically, like going up at times where she was able to tip the ball from the other side and make just huge plays." At the end of that, her mom said she was approached by one of the main schools here, UBC, by the coach there, asking her, she's only grade 10, but asking her to start to consider that, where is she looking, and, they would like to, at some point look at, her some more. So she got some more camps coming up. But having one of the main schools already approach her at that young age,
Wow.
Is showing that she has that ability to move forward. So when I'm helping a young athlete bring back that sort of joy and prowess that they have for playing their sport, that to me is more than I can do. I really wish that there was more, like back in the day, there's more people to be able to do that to young athletes when I was playing.
Right.
It would have been so much nicer as well to see like some of the people that lost out because of minor injuries, have been able to recover and go further.
Yeah. But the other thing too, Paul, I want to point out, because we talk about this in the Voila, is how to approach a client and to pay attention when you are approaching a client.
Yes.
And you did that. You saw the flinch and you're like, oh, I need to back out of here, figure out what's going on. So beautiful job there. So Paul, we're going to wrap this up here. What would you say to somebody who's been thinking about taking the Voila method?
If you are thinking about this, stop thinking. Start acting. This is one of the biggest things. Like, I was thinking for quite a while when I took the course in Phoenix, the biggest thing is to learn this new technique, learn the assessment. It'll become part of your toolbox, as well as a real key on the assessing for you to move forward. It's very a holistic approach, very organic approach. It really builds those layers of that physical, as well as you move into the next levels of 2 and 3. It builds more into more of those perceptive and limbic system understanding and how to work with those. Unlike a lot of the other systems that are out there, some great systems out there, but I mean, right now, I would have to say the combination of everything that Voila brings to the table is amazing. And it works, as I say, synergistically with most other techniques that are out there. So it's been, a beautiful journey for me so far, and I look forward to continuing it.
Beautiful, Paul. Now, we have an upcoming seminar at your facility of Three Peaks Health. I believe it is March 16th and 17th. Is that correct?
17th, 18th.
17th and 18th, St. Patrick's Day, right?
Yes.
Yes. So March 17th and 18th in Langley, Vancouver, British Columbia, however you guys use your address up there. I can never get that right. Paul, thank you so much for joining me today. What's the best way people can reach you via social media?
If you want to go on to social media and find me, just look up Paul K. Turner. I have a Facebook page there, it's a business Facebook page. It's the best way of reaching out to me there. As well as on Instagram, you can find us at the Three Peaks Health on there, or on Three Peaks Health webpage as well. So you can look up www.3pk.ca. That's another way of reaching out to us as well.
Brilliant, Paul. Thank you so much for your time and insight today.
Thank you very much, Joel, for having me. Greatly appreciated. Look forward to having you up here in March. And as Joel said, we have a seminar. There are a few spaces left, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thanks, Paul. See you in a month.